Hey, I'm Lori Clenny. I'm the Director of Student Services for the Early County School System. I'm also a licensed professional counselor. We decided to put together a series of tips for emotional well-being. Over the last year, we have faced new changes and stressful times. We hope that these tips will help our students and family better adjust to these new changes and help them in stressful times. Last session, we talked about 5-4-3-2-1, which is a grounding technique that you can utilize to practice mindfulness and to just ground yourself in the moment. I want to go back to what we talked about in the very first session, though, where we talked about the consequences of being unmindful and the importance of paying attention to your thoughts. So in order for you to understand a little bit more about thought patterns, I want to spend a little time talking about your brain. I think I also mentioned in the first session that our brains are just wired to hone in on those negative experiences. As you can see from the diagram, when we experience something negative or anything that we perceive as a negative experience, our body then reacts to that experience. We stress and react to it. And then our brains lock in the memory of that event, and then it just works on an endless looping cycle. After it locks in that memory, it starts searching for the next negative experience. So our brains are kind of working against us in that way, because if we have a positive experience, what do you think our brains do? It just goes in one area of the brain and out the other. So it takes time. We actually have to stop and think about positive interactions, whereas the negative ones just come straight to the front of our thoughts. So it is important, while practicing mindfulness or just grounding yourself in the moment, paying full attention to whatever's going on right then and there, to try to catch your thoughts, catch those negative thoughts, and then you want to challenge those negative thoughts. So the first step in challenging your negative thoughts is to catch that negative thought. And then you can write it down, or, you can just do it all in your head. You don't have to write it down if you're not a visual person, but you can write it down. You write down that thought that you want to challenge, and then you start questioning the thoughts. So you'll see the first question is, what is the worst that could really happen? So you want to think about that for a little bit and just take some time to just really brainstorm and try to figure out what is it that's really bothering you about this specific thought, and just write down whatever evidence that you have to support the worst thing that could possibly happen. The next question is, if my friend had this thought, what would I tell them? And that may be a tricky one, but a lot of times we're our own worst critic, so we can be a lot harder on ourselves. So sometimes it might be easier to think about, what would we tell our friend? How would we help them challenge this negative thought? And write that down as well. The next question is this 100% true? So here you want to think about, where is the evidence that supports this thought? What is making me feel like, just because this thought has come into my head, that it's true and there's no other, getting away with it, like the thought's there is true. My brain is sending me this message. So what evidence supports this thought? And last, what can I do to deal with this? And who can help? I really like the second part of that question, who can help? Because sometimes it's not easy to challenge these negative thoughts that we catch. Some are easier than others, but sometimes we have to get help. And that help can be like from a friend, like we mentioned earlier. It could be from a trusted family member, or a member of your church, or a staff member at school, teacher, coach, school counselor, or maybe a counselor in some kind of outside agency, or a doctor. Anybody can help you challenge your negative thoughts. You just have to ask. And it's okay to get bogged down in some of your thoughts and get to a point where you need to ask for help. So after you've caught your negative thought, and then you have challenged it or begun to challenge it either by yourself or with a friend, you're ready to start thinking about changing that thought. So sometimes just challenging the thought isn't enough, because maybe you did find some evidence to support that thought, or maybe you didn't feel comfortable asking a friend for help. So sometimes you just kind of got to dissect that thought and change it around a little bit. So a lot of times we get bogged down in what if statements, like what if this were to happen? And of course, usually our what ifs are negative, like what if I mess up? Well, even changing what if statements to what if I do really great? So you can challenge any thought, just change it around, or once you challenge it, change it into something more positive like that. Or what if I have a really bad time at the dance? Well, you can challenge that by saying, what if I really enjoy myself at the dance? See, just as something as simple as just changing the context of the thought can just really rewire your brain to start focusing in on some positives. So once you get out of the negative thought patterns, you're able to relax a little bit more, because worrying about what might happen, the what ifs, what could happen, worst case scenarios, that kind of just gets us experiencing those negative feelings versus positive feelings, where if you were thinking, what if I really enjoyed myself at the dance, you might be feeling more excited. Or if you are a little nervous, it would be like nervous energy, like you're still looking forward to it, but you have a little nervousness. So you can handle that. So the important thing is to remember to pay attention to your thoughts so that you're able to catch them. Once you catch them, to sit down, take a moment to challenge them, and then last, do not forget to change them and ask for help if you need help. Thank you for joining today's wellness tips. We hope that you found this to be helpful, and we hope that you stay tuned for our upcoming sessions.